Hey guys, so I know I haven't talked to you in ages. It feels like I can't even remember the last time I sat down in front of my camera. But there's a lot to update on, and I'm obviously not going to be able to go through all of it just in this video. So this video is basically just going to be the reason why I haven't been able to film. And that is, the main reason is Michaela's been in the hospital. We were in for 23 days at Sick Kids, and then a week went by, we were home, and we were right back into hospital. We went to a more local hospital for a week. So I think the best way to do this is to just basically explain why she was in hospital, what went on while she was in hospital, where we're at now, and go from there. So I have my calendar here with me, and that is just because I had to basically sit down and figure out the dates, because I don't even know the time frame of it all, because I was in hospital for so long, and it actually felt like I lived there. And I've never been in hospital so long in my life that it just felt normal to be there and be in a hospital room. So basically the way it happened was I watched my friend's little girl. They went south, and I watched her, and I didn't realize she was sick. That's nobody's fault, but Damien of course got sick, and then you had just seen in Kyle's birthday video that we were also sick, so it's inevitable that Michaela was gonna get sick. So we noticed that she was sick on the 23rd of February, and I actually, when Damien first got sick, I took Michaela and Damien both into my doctor's and asked for a prescription for Michaela because I knew she was going to get sick. So I had that prescription on hand, and I started that prescription as soon as I could, and that prescription is called Cefprozil or Cefzil, and that's the one that she always goes on first when she's sick. So she was started on that on the 23rd of February, and we noticed by the 25th that she wasn't getting better. So I knew at that point that I needed to go to the hospital. So we took her up to our local hospital, which is only 15 minutes from us, and basically, of course, we were transferred to Sick Kids. That night we were transferred, and we went into isolation. When we went into our local hospital, she only required probably about, I think it was 3 liters of oxygen, which is not much. It's only 30% oxygen, roughly. So in the atmosphere, there is only 21%. So 30% is not much more than what we all require. So by the time we had actually gotten to Sick Kids, we went into Emerge, because that's the way the way things go, is you are always transferred into Emerge at the next hospital. So by the time that happened, she was declining more, and she was up to, I believe, 70% oxygen, and her blood pressure was very, very low. She had to have IV fluids injected into her, but not by even just an IV machine. We actually had to push IV fluids. I believe it was 1,200 milliliters of IV fluids into her veins so that her blood pressure would hopefully recover itself. At that point, it still wasn't working, so we tried a medication. Her extremities, her hands and her feet were very, very cold, and this medication, normally it affects that as well, so we had to go with a different type of medication that they normally wouldn't use to try and not affect that anymore. So at that point, she just kept basically declining, and it was like, no, we need to get to ICU and basically go from there. It was the night of the 25th, and I believe we didn't get up to ICU until, I think it was 9 p.m. So I'm just going to go through my notes. So when we got to hospital, they did x-ray. Lower right was decreased, which means she had start of a pneumonia in her lower left lung. And On the Friday, the 26th, we started her on the CPAP machine, which allows pressures in her lungs to help keep them open. Whereas normally when you're put on oxygen, you do the breathing yourself, you're just intaking the oxygen. So with CPAP, it holds your lungs open because Michaela was at a point where she was requiring so much oxygen that her lungs weren't even really doing anything anymore. So then she was also given an art line or an artery line. It's basically an IV that goes right into your artery, and that allows you to see her blood pressure constantly instead of having to read it with the cuff. You see that constantly, and then also you're able to get blood from it whenever you need to, which is good because Michaela is always hard to get an IV access or get blood from because her veins have been poked so many times. They're just so damaged that it's very hard to get a vein. So the art line was amazing to me. We've never had an art line before, and I think it just helped the process a lot more because she didn't have to be poked all the time. And then also that same day she was given a catheter to help her pee, because not to help her pee, but to track what she was peeing so that we could make sure that she's getting enough fluids and also her body is exerting as much fluids as we were putting in. So the Foley catheter, I believe, was only in 1 day, so it wasn't a big deal. It was just more of a safety precaution to make sure that everything else was working good. So the next day, which was the Saturday, she was doing fairly well at that point. We thought, you know, she was not progressing, but doing not too bad. And she was on 75% oxygen on CPAP. And her pressures were 14 on 8, and normally I believe they're 10 on 5 when you get off of the CPAP. So she was satting anywhere from 95 to 98, which was great for her because we know she even sat lower than that at home, which showed that, you know, this was working, it was doing her good, and that, you know, she was still able to progress a little bit. Later that night, we had lowered her to 70% oxygen, and then lowered her again at 8:30 to 55. So we slowly progressed her down to 55%, which is great progress over 1 day. Normally, you know, it takes a huge amount of time to do that, but she was doing fairly well, so we felt, why not? Then at 11 p.m. we noticed she was horribly upset, and I didn't know what was wrong. Normally a repositioned help, normally, you know, doing different things would help her settle down again, and normally when she's upset, she'll destat and like go to 85, which is not good, and the doctors don't like seeing that. So there was just nothing that I could figure out that would work. And then she had a coughing fit for like over like an hour and a half, and she just wouldn't stop coughing, and it wasn't a productive cough where she was bringing up anything. It was just this dry cough, and it was just heartbreaking to see because there was nothing I could do. And then I just, for whatever reason, I walked towards the end of the bed and I smelt her diaper, and I knew it was her diaper instantly because I know that she normally gets really raspy and phlegmy when she's gone to the washroom, and that's how I know to change her. But this, she was just so dry, I didn't pick up on the signal, and so I changed her bum, and basically she just didn't pick herself back up from that point. So we actually had to go to 100% oxygen with 16 on 10 CPAP. Sorry, BiPAP. I believe that's the point where we went to BiPAP, and BiPAP basically breathes for you. It holds your lungs open, but it also, I believe, decreases your lungs so that basically the breathing motion can happen. So she was on 16 and 10, and again, normal is like 10 on 5. And so after that, we were able to lower to 16 on 8, which is a little bit of progress, but she was just so horribly upset and just wasn't picking herself back up. So that early morning, which was the Sunday, she was staying in the low 70s to 80s, which is horrible when you're requiring 100% oxygen plus those type of pressures on BiPAP. And normally in that situation, the doctors would automatically say your child or whoever it is needs a breathing tube. They need to be intubated and they need the breathing tube no matter what. But I felt like Michaela is so strong and she's been through so much that and the thing is, like, she always picks herself back up. If she desats, she picks herself back up, and it may take a half hour to an hour, but she does it. And at that moment, I felt like they were telling me that I needed a breathing tube, but I pushed it off, and I knew that Michaela could do it. She was very strong, and she was showing that by always picking herself back up. So that night, she was at 100% oxygen the whole night, and I stared at that monitor for 4 hours straight. I literally sat my chair in front of the monitor and didn't take my eyes off of it. And I was so exhausted because I only had, I believe, 1 hour of sleep the night before. And this was at like, I think it was like early morning, like 3 a.m. And I knew I wasn't going to be getting any sleep. And even my nurse, like, she told me, she's like, you are just like completely exhausted. I had gotten the chills. I was shaking. I was just so mentally and physically, emotionally drained that I couldn't even function, but I knew that I needed to focus on that monitor and make sure that Michaela was gonna pick herself back up and keep going. And sure enough, it was around 3 a.m. and she did. She picked herself back up and she was anywhere from 89 to 92, and that is where we would like Michaela at. Normally with any other person it would be a lot higher, but with her and her oxygen levels, normally 92 is a really good number for her. And in that moment I sank to the ground and I started crying, and I knew that she had picked herself back up, and I was so happy because I had proved to the doctors that no, she could do this, and that she could do this and we could get through it. And even for the next, I believe, couple days or so, so over the course of from the Sunday to the Friday, Michaela kind of just stayed where she was at. She didn't make any progress. She didn't decline at all either. But we just found that she wasn't getting better, and it was basically draining her because she was working so hard, and she didn't have the time or effort to recover herself. So on the next Friday, which was the Thursday, the 3rd of March, the doctor basically came in and said, look, she's not getting better. She's in an okay place right now. She's not suffering, but she's not making progress. And basically what he recommended was to give her the breathing tube at a point in time where she was okay to do that. She was still strong. The chances of her recovering was better than the chances of her declining with the breathing tube, because there is a chance of her relying on the breathing tube once she gets it. And I was so scared that would happen, that she wasn't strong enough, that in the end she would just be on a breathing tube and basically be a vegetable. And she could be on this breathing tube for a week, she could be on it for 2 months, she could be on it for the rest of her life. And at that point, we were just so terrified of that happening, that she would rely on it forever, and we would have to come to a place where we wouldn't let her just lay there anymore, because when you have a breathing tube, you have to be sedated so that you're not moving it. And to us, that's just not a life. And she's just such a happy little, content little girl, and we just didn't want to see that. And obviously no one wants to see that for their child, but at that point there was a greater chance of her recovering and more quickly and not suffering than to not give her the breathing tube. I was terrified that I was going to lose her and that she was going to suffer through it. And I knew I came to that place where I knew it was the right thing to do, and it's not something that I had imagined doing, because our plans were always not to intubate if we didn't have to. So for us to come to that, it was really, really hard on the whole family. And my parents and Kyle actually came that night before it was put in, because the doctor came in, I believe it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and he said, you know, like, as soon as possible would be good. And I basically asked him, I said, can it wait 3 hours, because that's how long it takes for everyone to get to the hospital, because I was the only one there, and I wanted them to see her awake and before we gave her the breathing tube, because if she didn't come out of it, then we would never see her again. And it was really, really hard, but we managed to get through it. So the breathing tube was put in at 12 o'clock at night. It actually just kept getting pushed off. There was other people or children in the ward that needed more things before she could get it, which is a good thing for us, because we knew she was stable at where she was, so she didn't go decline at all. But it was the worst like 2 or 3 hour wait of my entire life. And when I came back in, I was shocked in a way that I was content with the way she looked. She looked very sedated, obviously, because they had to put her under. But I didn't expect the breathing tube to not look as bad. I expected it to look a lot bigger and a lot more harsh, the feeling of it, but it was literally just a little tube that went down her throat, and it only goes down so far into your throat, and I didn't know that in the beginning. So at that point, I was okay with where we were at, and I did post something on my Facebook to my family and basically everyone that I'm friends with, and I posted it before the breathing tube was put in, and I want to try and read it, and I might break down a little bit, but I felt like in that moment I was by myself, and this is what I needed to express to everyone. In this moment, I am faced with every parent's greatest and sometimes unknown fear. The moment where you have to make the decision to put a breathing tube into your child's lungs. She is not necessarily doing horrible right now, but she is not progressing enough to get better without complications in the end, or worse, not coming out of this at all. With the breathing tube, they will be able to do further testing to see what exactly Michaela needs to become healthy again. She may have the breathing tube for a day, or she may have it for the rest of her life, whatever length that time may be. I'm starting to come to a place where I feel numb, but at peace with this decision. I cannot explain the way I feel nor do I know if there is a certain way I should feel. I know in my heart she will be okay, either way. So at roughly 9 o'clock tonight, she will have the procedure done. The procedure we have been trying to stay away from for a long time. I don't think there is much to say other than thank you to all you have prayed and hoped for Michaela to get better. She is still very strong, and that's exactly why it has taken so long to make this hard decision. Because she just does keep fighting. She will continue to fight, but she will be able to rest for a little while and be comfortable in her sedation. She deserves to be comfortable, and I'm glad that she will be at last. I can't express how much I love this gorgeous little girl. So that's what I wrote, and like I said in that message, they were going to be able to do further testing because they were treating her pneumonia because of a certain virus. It was called the human metapneumovirus virus. And at that point, she had finished her antibiotics and she still wasn't getting better. So they knew there was something else going on down in her lungs that we weren't seeing. So with the breathing tube, they were going to be able to take tissues or fluids from her lungs, and take them to the lab and basically see what was going on. And at that point, they were able to find that there was a certain bacteria that was caused by the breathing tube, but there was also, I believe they found C. diff, which I don't think was actually C. diff. It was just either the blood was sitting there or the tissue was sitting there too long or whatever, but they were able to treat the bacteria that was there and put her on 2 more antibiotics and then also an antibiotic for the C. diff. And so basically Michaela, she had the breathing tube, and it was only a matter of, I believe, 4 days, or maybe 5 days. She got the breathing tube at 12 o'clock at night on the Friday, and it came out on the Tuesday morning. Before I even got back there, she was off the breathing tube, and we just knew that she had to make that progress in order to get to a new place of taking it out. And honestly, when they told me that they might be able to take it out in the next couple days, that's all I needed to hear. And it wasn't even like waiting for it to come out. It was just literally hearing that, yes, it will come out. Like, we don't have to like not know anymore. We know that it will come out in the next couple days, and it was fine. At that moment, I knew that she was good and that she was gonna make it through, and it was gonna take a long time to get better, but she was getting better, and the breathing tube was just that step to help her get over that hurdle. And she actually went, because normally what happens is when you're on the breathing tube, you are on BiPAP settings, and she was able to lower to CPAP settings, the lowest of the settings, and go straight to CPAP right after the breathing tube, which is amazing. And from there on out, I believe we were in the ICU for another week or so, or another 4 days, and then we were moved up to pediatrics, and that's where she just basically got better. She wasn't there, you're not allowed to move up to the floor until you are off CPAP, so at that point she was on a high flow oxygen. So she went from high flow to regular oxygen and just continued to progress and get off the oxygen. And on the Friday of the 18th of March, we were able to take her home, and we didn't get home till 2 a.m. on the Saturday, but it was just the best feeling in the world. And it was weird because I actually didn't know what it was going to be like to be home anymore. I didn't know what it was to expect, and it was weird because normally all I can do is wait to get home, and this time was different. It felt like I don't know why I'm going home, even though she was better, and she was better for a good like day or so before we left, and I was thankful that we were going home, but it was just different. So then about a week went by, and it was the 27th of March, and we knew that Kyle had gotten a cold again, and we knew the inevitable was going to happen, and she ended up getting sick again, and we took her to another local hospital that we could hope that we were stay there instead of so far from home, because I realized that she wasn't as sick as she normally gets. She basically just had a cold and she needed some oxygen. So we stayed there for exactly a week, and she was on high flow oxygen. She went from oxygen to high flow, and then we decreased her to oxygen, and we were there for a week. I did chest physio. I may have a video on that in a separate one, but I had to do her chest physio. I was there every single day again, and the Saturday came around, and there was a lot more difficult discussions with these 2 stays, because we know she's at a place where things can go bad very quickly, and we need to know what we want to do in those situations. And so we basically had to come up with a plan of like what we would like in the future, because I feel like with Michaela's situation, it is so hard going into hospitals, and the doctors look at you like, oh, we're the professionals, and you don't know what you're doing. But in reality, I am her doctor. I am a medical professional for her, and just because I didn't go to school doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about. And it's always so hard when you go into an emergency room and try and explain, no, this is what is wrong with my child, but yet they have a different opinion. So we were able to have a discussion about what we would like and what I feel is right for Michaela, and I now will actually have a letter saying everything I want to say, and be able to hand it right to the doctor when we go into an emergency room, and they'll understand that, no, I've actually made all these hard decisions, you know, before, and these are my decisions for the future. So the biggest thing this time around was putting Michaela on oxygen at home, because Michaela, her saturations are always lower than what a person should be normally, and I felt I was always okay with that. I knew that she satted anywhere from 90 to 93 during the day, and she always dropped and dipped down low to 80, 85-ish during the night, and I was okay with that because I knew she was comfortable and I knew she wasn't struggling, so I didn't want her on oxygen at home, and Kyle felt the same way. And so when we went home from Sick Kids, we chose to go home without oxygen, and at that point I was completely okay with that, and I knew she was 100% back to herself. But when we went in the second time, we knew that something just wasn't right, and yeah, it was just one of those fluke things that she got sick again, but we wanted to make sure that she was going to come back to her baseline from before the very first time we went in, and we knew we were there a week, the second stay, and we were basically talking about having oxygen on hand at home, just in case she got sick again. So we did actually the testing that you have to do to require oxygen to have it covered, and our plan was originally to go home without it and basically have the prescription. If we would like oxygen, all we would have to do is make a phone call. But at the week's mark, I just had enough of being in hospital. I knew I wasn't doing anything different in hospital that I couldn't do at home. I've always done her care all by myself, and oxygen was just that one last thing that I couldn't do at home because I didn't have it. And she was on such a minimal amount of oxygen. So she was only on like 0.5 of a liter, which is like next to nothing. It's basically room air, just with a bit of flow to it. And I knew that was the missing piece to be able to care for her the way I needed to at home. She's much better off at home in her own environment, with family, comfortable in her own bed and laying on her couch and having her surroundings, than to be in a hospital and only require such a little amount of support. So at that point we decided we would take home oxygen, but we wouldn't always have to use it. And there's difficult, it's difficult because when you require oxygen, you are basically supposed to use it. And our new doctor, because we actually got a new doctor through this hospital now, she feels the way I feel about the situation. She knows where we're coming from. She understands that all we want for Michaela is to be comfortable. And she was okay with saying, look, this is what I'm going to prescribe you. If you use it, you use it. If you don't, you don't. And basically, no one can say it any different. And we get to control how much she gets, or if she gets it at all, or if she needs more, then we're allowed to give her more if we feel like she's sick. And now basically when she's sick, all we have to do is say, hey, look, we need a prescription. We feel like she's aspirated, or we feel like she's got a cold. And now I get to care for her at home, and I think it'll be a lot less stressful on everyone, because I was gone for 3 weeks, and my mom and dad had to watch Damien while Kyle could be at work, and then Kyle would have to pick him up after work, and there was a lot of driving for the family because they would drive the sick kids, and it's 3 hours there and 3 hours back, and it was just so hard. And there's so much money that is lost as well because Kyle can't work all the time, and I'm spending money down there. Like, we stayed in a hotel 3 times because we didn't have a place to stay, the whole family, and that was $600 just in itself for 3 days. And there is what's called the Ronald McDonald House. I'm sure many people have heard about it. And finally, halfway through, we did get in there, and we were just blown away about how amazing the Ronald McDonald House is. And I'm actually going to put all the information down below in the description, because if you guys can support the Ronald McDonald House in any way, shape or form, that would be amazing, because they are my new favorite charity, I guess, and I'm gonna try and support them as much as I can. And of course, you know, with us staying there, we saw how it helps, and you had a place to stay, you always had food to eat, and just basically a support system. Everyone that is there knows exactly how you feel because they're there for the same reasons, and it's an incredible place. So again, I'm gonna put all that information down below, and if you can support them in any way, that would be amazing. But for now, Michaela is doing well. We came home from our local hospital. She wasn't quite better, but because we had the oxygen, we were able to get her better at home. I'm currently still doing her chest physio, and I will be doing that for another week, just to make sure that nothing's staying down there and catching anything else again. So she's on home oxygen. Right now she's on 0.5 of a liter. I go up a little bit at night just because I know she destats anyways. But she's doing well. She's, I would say, back to normal, and I'm just giving her that extra oxygen because, for one, I'm waiting for an oxygen monitor to see exactly what she's satting at. So as soon as I get that, I'll be able to tell and adjust her oxygen to that. And for one, I want her to be comfortable and get 100% better, because I don't want to end up in the hospital again. But so there's a whole lot of new equipment that has come into the home since I've been away. I'll be doing a video on that. I'll be doing videos on wedding stuff. We actually just had our Jack and Jill last weekend. It was amazing. I'll explain that in another video. There's just so much to update on, but I felt like this was the main reason why I've been gone. The main talk I need to tell you guys. And I just feel like it was the most important. So that is all, I guess, for this video. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below, and I will be sure to answer them either in a video or I'll comment back. And I hope you guys are all doing well. We are good now. It was a rough month and a half. The hardest month and a half I've ever had to deal with. But I know it's not the last time I'm gonna have to go through this, and realistically it will come again. But now at least we know how to deal with the situation. We have more support behind us, having our doctors behind us, knowing exactly what we want. So anyways, I hope you guys are all well. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next one. Bye, guys.